Well, welcome everybody today. It's great to see so many people here. I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, Corrie Williams from New Forest West. New Forest West, and she's going to be speaking on the EU infiltration into our schools.
Yep.
Dear.
Thank you very much, Marilyn, and thank you all for having me today. There's a few familiar faces that I know, and there's some new ones that I've met today, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Marilyn says, my name is Corrie Williams. I'm an active member of UKIP. I work within, I say work, we don't get paid, none of us do, but I assist, shall I say, in the New Forest West branch. I'm the branch secretary there. I'm also one of the people that is going to be running for the county elections next year in 2013 in the Lyndhurst division. I am a mother of one. I live with my son Jack in Burley. He goes to the local school there. And I run a business from home. I'm a consultant in business development and marketing, and I work predominantly in NHS and public sector IT. What I want to talk to you about today actually doesn't have anything to do with my profession. It's something that's very close to my heart, not as a professional, but as a parent. And it's about the propaganda that the EU is trying to attempt to disseminate throughout our schools. It seems as though the EU aren't really content with enforcing policy that cripples our local government and financial industry, small businesses, farming, fishing and the like. And not just that, but crippling us with excessive immigration. They have their sights firmly set on our children as well. And this is what really gets up my nose about the whole thing, is that they're children, they're young, they're at school, they're a captive audience. And as most children, you sit in class and you take in, what is told to you by your teachers. As usual, the EU have a multi-million euro budget as well at their assistance. So I've done a bit of digging into it. I brought some business cards with me because when I normally do this presentation, I have videos and various visual aids that I will use. What I can do is send that to anyone who's interested afterwards if you'd like to see what I've unearthed while I've been doing some digging. So I'll start by quoting the UK Education Act. I have to read this bit. It says that the local education authority, the governing body and head teacher, shall forbid the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subjects in the school. And yet, having done my research, I've spoken with teachers, I've spoken with school governors and children. What I find is, and I say the guilt here is not with the schools or the teachers, is that this is exactly what the EU is attempting to peddle throughout the school. Now, normally at this point, this is where I would run my video, which shows, it clearly illustrates the problem, and in fact it catches the EU with their pants down on the subject. They have a lady there, Justine Schillings, I believe, at a school at education fair, and this is what she was quoted to say, and this is the video that I have. She says, "We are here to offer to the teachers the resources produced by the European Commission's office in London, but also the ones we are being given by the Director General in Brussels and Luxembourg. Because everybody has now picked up on the idea that we will never succeed to convince people about the value of being members of the EU if we do not start early enough with the young people, before they form prejudices and are misinformed by the sources." And that's what she's quoted. It's all on camera to be saying. And you'll see on the video as well, she's got a stand, and the amount of literature that they have at their disposal as well. Whether it gets through is another thing, but it's there, and there's an office in London directly set up to support local UK schools with this teaching aids and resources. And again, feel free to email me afterwards, and I'll be happy to send you the examples that I've found. And I've taken a look at some of this literature. It's seemingly harmless on the surface. It's broken down into age categories for the under 9s, 9 to 12s, 12 to 15s, and the 15 and overs. And it contains lesson plans on some very harmless subject matters. Things such as learning about the member states, we call countries, celebrating our diversity, the single currency. And then if you dig a bit deeper, and in fact there's one document that's about 84 pages long, which I couldn't bring with me today because it's too much to print out.
How many pages?
84 pages long, which talks about how the EU was formed, and it's completely one-sided. But it's all about the benefits of EU membership. I mean, if you, and I've said to a couple of people today, if you were from, I don't know, say South America, and you came to this country and you read this 84-page document, you'd think, wow, what a vision. I've got to be part of this EU. It's amazing. And this is the supporting aids that are being given to teachers, or they're attempting to give to teachers, to then pass on to our children. And it's total and utter propaganda. It tells you about how you can be a good European citizen. It tells you how the formation of the EU is single-handedly responsible for peace across Europe. It tells you how democracy reigns, and how this democracy gives European citizens the freedom to elect their own governments. Well, we know this isn't true. We've seen Italy, right or wrong, we've seen Greece, we've seen, elected leaders overthrown. It doesn't talk about anything like this. Not at any point in the research that I did I find any material that was provided by the European Commission that highlights some of the less palatable effects of EU membership, the things that we are living with here today and we'll all be very familiar with. The effect of mass immigration doesn't get mentioned. The cost of unsightly and ultimately fed inefficient wind farms. The control that the EU wields over a public sector. I don't know if any of you have seen the DVD that talks about how it actually touches every area of our life. None of this comes out in the teaching aids. The signing over of British fishing grounds and the effect it's had on the economy and the ecology. The 50 million a day that we send to the EU. The undermining and overthrowing of elected leaders, which I've already mentioned. And the fact that the EU hasn't been able to balance its own books since 2002. We have Marta Andreasen to, obviously to refer to on that count.
Audit as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was after I did some research into this, and the figures that were quoted to me, which I took from Marta Andreasen, was that 90% of the 135 billion euro annual budget is unaccounted for. And it's just, it's not credible, is it? It just doesn't, when you think of numbers that big, it doesn't make sense. But this isn't coming out in the teaching, not in the teaching, sorry, in the materials. So the list of blunders from the EU is endless, but all this information is lost in translation. This is not what is being printed in the resources that are being given to schools to help them teach students about the EU. So my point really is that if our children are going to receive an education about what it means to be part of the EU and what it means to be European, then they should expect the right to a fair and unbiased education. Throw it out there for debate, allow their common sense to discuss it, determine the pros and cons for themselves. So teach them about Europe, but teach them warts and all, because it certainly is. It goes back quite a long way, all of this propaganda. I found publications back to 1996. There was an infant's colouring book aimed at 5 to 6-year-olds perhaps, called Let's Draw Europe Together. And I say, it's all very, very subtly done. It's very clever, how it's done. But the teaching aid behind it is quoted to say it's intended as a call to school children, as well as to all of us, to commit ourselves to achieving European unity. There's a publication, a guide for students and teachers, issued by the European Commission. It reads, as a European citizen, you should enjoy higher standards of living, improved career opportunities and development. Well, so we have over 2 million